everybody, and welcome back to NHPA's latest installment of our strategic webinar series. You probably noticed there's someone sitting to my left here, a familiar face to a lot of you, and we already apologize for that face. This is Mr. Jim Robish. As very often, he's going to be my partner in crime today. And I think he clarified last time I said that we have never actually been convicted of any criminal charges, but you know, there might be several pending still.
Except we're filming right across the street from the police station. I don't know what that means.
You seemed very nervous coming in here today.
I was.
You're like a mafia don with your jacket pulled over your head. But nonetheless, we made it, and welcome to everybody tuning in today. I think that there's probably no better topic for the two of us to discuss, being two big retail nerds, than talking about key retail metrics. And for us, that's not something that is, you know, I think for a lot of retailers even, that's kind of a scary topic, but for us, that's very near and dear to our hearts, as it is to our sponsors. I want to, before we get too far in the webinar, once again, recognize our sponsors, the folks at Epicor. We appreciate them sponsoring the entire strategic series of webinars this year. And you're going to be hearing from Epicor as part of this webinar, and the webinar, that should be a trademark for Epicor, a webinar.
Yeah.
You're going to be hearing from them, and they're going to talk a little bit about, you know, kind of this concept of retail metrics and how you can utilize the tools that are available through your POS system to really drive into those numbers. But Jim, as we're going to be talking about retail metrics and key retail metrics, you know, this is something that I know I've talked about at webinars and at presentations throughout the years. I know you guys talk about it all the time from the Farnsworth Group. So why don't we set the stage a little bit and at least make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. I usually like to say this is nothing more than just managing by the numbers and taking a deeper look at the numbers that you get back on your income statement, and to a lesser degree what we're going to be talking about on your balance sheet. But really, you know, you may have heard of what we're talking about as KPIs, or key profit indicators, key performance indicators. And this is really just using that information, using those numbers to better run your business and better understand what's working in your business and what can be working better. And when you use them right and you use them as part of a plan for growth, it can really help drive your business to the next level. Jim, is that kind of the way you see it when we're talking about these things?
Yeah, I think you described it really well. There's always, you know, those folks that we know that want to make it as complicated as they can, and it's complicated, you don't use it.
Right.
The simpler the metric, the simpler it is to manage and grow your business. Yeah, we started using, you know, metrics with people 30 years ago. And they're going, oh gosh, I never thought of it that way. Well, yeah, you know, and I guess the big thing is, how can you plan to change if you don't have metrics that tell you what you need to change? It's almost like you're building a roadmap. The other thing I think I'd say, Dan, is that there's a lot of people that, you know, this is what I use. This is my favorite. Yeah. Who cares, as long as you're using something and getting better performance out of what you're using. And the final thing I'd say is final thing, right?
Final thing on this topic.
On this topic, is that a lot of times it really helps get staff engaged.
Yeah. When
they're just not hearing, well, we did this, you know, hundreds of thousands yesterday or this week or whatever it might be. Instead of hearing that, they understand, well, where is that coming from, and how what they do, regardless of what it is that they do, whether they're in the back office or on the floor or whatever, how they can influence those numbers. So I think that's how they can be very helpful. Of course, and you know, the people we know that refuse to share numbers with their people, they won't put their metrics up on the wall
right.
in the lunchroom or anything, but I think it's a real healthy exercise to do that.
Well, I know when I usually present on this, there's a few things that I list as kind of mission critical to begin thinking in this kind of way and begin thinking in a managing by the numbers sort of way as it relates to continuous improvement in your operation. And the first thing is, one, you have to have a baseline. You have to have the ability to say, okay, well, these are my numbers, but what does that mean? And a lot of times I'll say it's kind of no different than, and this is certainly not the webinar we're doing today about people getting healthier, but the truth of the matter is it's very similar to when you go to the doctor. I mean, if you don't understand the numbers in general, you're at a disadvantage. If you go to your doctor for your annual checkup and they say, oh, your blood pressure is 220 over 90, or 145, you unless you have some context on what a good blood pressure is, then you really don't know what to do or how to react to that. And this is no different.
So true. That is so true.
When you're checking the health of your business and want to get your business healthier, the first thing I advise is that you understand the baseline. And this is just a quick plug because it's that time of year when NHPA is collecting data for our cost of doing business study. And we've been doing our cost of doing business study for over 100 years, where we gather actual real world information from retailers, hardware stores, home centers, lumber yards, paint decorating stores. And we compile that data into a report that lists all of the industry averages for income statement, balance sheet, ratios, all of those key retail metrics that you're going to want to know. So when you start looking at yours, you can say, where do I stack up? Am I good? Am I bad? Am I somewhere in the middle? And I know that it's even something that, as you guys work with retailers, a lot of times I know you'll rely on the cost of doing business study as of your benchmark. So that's thing one. Thing two is, I always say, as you were touching on, Jim, is like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter what metrics you tackle. It doesn't matter if you have ones that are near and dear to you, as Jim said. We know some retailers that one of the ones we'll talk about today is conversion rate, and that's kind of been one of the hot ones that's been used a lot lately. Well, that's fine if you don't want to focus on conversion rate, but I always say pick three. Pick three things that you're going to build a plan around and write them down. And as Jim said, the last part of that plan is, how am I going to engage my team? And how am I going to share that data with my team? So you might want to look at these key retail metrics, key performance indicators, and say, what are three that I can tackle that are going to have an impact on my business, but I'm also comfortable sharing those with my team? A great one that's been thrown around is something like transaction size. I don't know why you wouldn't want to share transaction size with your business, with everyone in your business. And to Jim's point, those are the kind of things you can engage the team, put up in the break room and let people see what our goal is and how we're monitoring progress to that goal, and get everybody committed to trying to do what they can to reach that goal and really spell out to them how they can reach that goal. But so those are kind of the three things as I talk about key KPIs or key retail metrics that I always like to focus on is get a baseline, get it with the cost of doing business study, pick three things you want to focus on and build a plan around those, and then be willing to share those with your employees. Is there anything you would add to that, Jim, or anything that you see as mission critical?
Yeah, I think one of the most mission critical things that happened over the years was when we took the cost of doing business survey and expanded it from just being numbers without any explanation of what they are, how to use them, and then to take it a step further and have the various categories with subcategories within the categories of stores.
Right.
And I think that gives people a lot more flexibility in how they can compare themselves. We're very fortunate or cursed that our industry is not very consistent.
Yeah, right.
I like to say, I've been in 1 million hardware stores, and I've never seen two that are exactly the same, and that's problematic in one regard. But at least we've got the numbers from the CODB that we can go back and say, okay, well, here's this one, here's multiple stores, here's high profit stores, and that's invaluable. And the benchmark, establishing that very first benchmark is so important. Right? Because I always used to say, how do you know where you're going or how to get there if you don't know where you are?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That was my situation a lot of times.
but I mean, it's definitely a great point. Is hopefully if you're logging on and attending this webinar, you're already in the mindset that you might want to be considering, what are these ways that I can utilize information and data to improve my business? Again, without a guidepost, without an understanding of where the rest of the industry is, then you're really at a disadvantage. And one thing, I've been with NHPA now for 25 years, and so I've been understanding and looking at this, and you've certainly been in the industry longer than 25 years. And somehow I always work that into our discussions. Is I've been in the industry a long time, but you've been in the industry for a really long time.
Healthy, positive stuff coming from you, man.
But one of the things I always notice about the cost of doing business study is year over year, as we're doing the analysis, I'm really not able to talk today. As we're doing the analysis on this, it's always different stuff. When you look at the differences between your average hardware store performer or average lumber dealer performer and the high profit, and just to explain that a little bit, is the cost of doing business study breaks out the average store and then the high profit stores. And the high profit stores are those that are in the top 25% in terms of net profit return. And so these are the stores that you want to be. These are the stores that are earning double-digit net profits at the end of the year, as opposed to, we used to say the average hardware store, we used to call it 3 pennies of profit for a reason, is because, they would hover around 2.7 to 3% net profits off of this as a percentage of overall sales. And, I don't know if it was a joke that I stole from you long ago, but, people would say, you'd probably be better off instead of running a hardware store, stick your money on the stock market and you get better than a 2.7% return.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say that. No, not at all. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at these stores that are getting 9, 10, 11, 12% return on sales versus the ones getting 2.5 to 3%, it always boils down to a few of these key retail metrics, and they change over time. But looking at the differences, you could really see what are the high performers doing that is different from the average crew. And generally, when I describe this, is they're just running a tighter retail operation. I mean, they might have, for instance, higher gross margin as a measurement. And that just means, to me, they're buying better. They've figured out, how do I buy more efficiently? Maybe they're concentrating more purchases around show times because they're more organized, so they're taking advantage of the deals. Maybe they're spreading their purchases across a broader range of suppliers, or maybe they're focusing on opportunities that they have to utilize their credit more effectively to take advantage of discounts when they can. But there's a whole range of things like that. But every time we look at the study, it's 2 or 3 different things that kind of rise to the top. It says, oh, well, that's clearly the difference between the high performers. Is that what you see when you go out to businesses, Jim? Like if you're called in and a retail operation hires you and says, hey, Jim, we want you to kind of tell us what can we do to improve our operation. Is that what you usually does it boil down to, on the numbers? Are there a few things that usually stick out to you when you look at them?
They're so different. Right. It's almost like you go through your checklist.
Yeah.
And I would liken it to those darn lights that come on in your car that say check engine.
Yeah.
And then you got to go in and have them say, well, that's a Q37 code. Well, when you've got a problem, that's the light that's come on, but you got to dig down deeper into it. And to do that, certainly there are metrics that we like to look at. Again, ones that we can very quickly compare back to national averages, for one, but two, to other stores that we work with that are similar in type and similar in size. But yeah, you're right, absolutely right.
And I think what's kind of interesting is, as you'll look in the coming weeks and so on, some of the more information that NHPA has planned to come out about this topic, story in the magazines. Additional downloadable opportunities for you to kind of think this way, is that it seems like every few years, I mean, there's some of these KPIs or key retail metrics that you want to look at, but it seems that some kind of come into fashion and then they go out of fashion, and fashion might not be the right term for it, because I think there's legitimate kind of market forces that might dictate which ones are kind of more looked at sometimes than others. I mean, it seems like a little while back I brought up transaction size, but everybody was focusing on transaction size, and for a lot of good reasons. It's a very good metric to focus on because it's one of the quickest and I say easiest, but I'm saying easiest comparatively ways to drive top line sales in your operation is you've already got customers in your store. You're not talking about increasing foot traffic. You're talking about selling more to the customers that are already buying stuff from you. So it becomes maybe a little bit easier proposition. But one of the things we're doing in some of the material that we have coming out in the next several weeks is looking at, a handful of these key retail metrics that are kind of on trend right now. And that's either because some of the market forces have made them perhaps rise to a higher level of concern. And some of them are just things that are good to look at that are maybe not some of the typical ones that we'll talk about when we talk about something like transaction size or gross margin or something like that. And the first thing that we wanted to talk about was something I mentioned a little bit earlier, and it's this concept of looking at your conversion rate. And I have an opportunity to talk, quite honestly, on the independent side, a couple of the roundtables that I work with are really some of the best independent retail minds. A lot of your customers and friends that you've worked with too, Jim.
That's why.
Yeah, well, there's the common denominator right there. And despite that, I still value their insights and input. But kind of this topic of conversation cropped up in some of those groups. And one retailer even said, I think right now the most important metric we're monitoring in our business is conversion rate. And I think that's more important than any other metric we're looking at is conversion rate. And I know you guys, we were talking about this earlier because we call it conversion rate. At times you guys have called it closure rate. It's really the same thing, the same principle. And just quickly to kind of explain what conversion rate is it means, you get X amount of customers into your store, and from that traffic, how many of those footsteps are you actually turning into a sale? And the discussion behind this is it's kind of like walks hand in hand with transaction size. And we've actually at NHPA done some, kind of ad hoc research around this. And we would, the old-fashioned way to do this research, and I'm sure you've done this before, Jim, too, is stand out in front of a store, and if someone walks out without anything in their hands, you ask them, why didn't you buy anything? And that gets you an understanding of what are the things you need to do to address your conversion rate. So if you have 100 customers a day, I'm just doing it to make math simple, 100 customers a day come into your store, and only 50 of them walk out buying something, you have a 50% conversion rate. And the goal would be, well, how do we get those 50 that walked out without buying something to buy something, thereby increasing our conversion rate?
Yep.
And again, I think it's an offshoot of, okay, if you address transaction size, that's great. You're talking about selling more to people who are already buying something, but you've done the hard work of getting customers in your store. You should also be focusing on how do I sell stuff to people that are in my store who might not be buying it? And what do you kind of think about that? Because I know you guys talk about closure rate a lot, Jim.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're dead on. Why spend the money, either marketing, location costs, whatever, to bring people into your store and let them leave without buying something?
Right.
And of course, we always try and make parents worthy and complication. And, it's not just, sell them something, sell them for sure what they came expecting to be able to buy. Yeah. So, we're destination stores. There just aren't a whole lot of people that, oh, gee, let's just go wander down the hardware store and go shopping.
Except for my wife. She really likes to do that.
Of course. I drug my wife to so many hardware stores. I think she could go without seeing another one the rest of her life. So the other part then is, it kind of gets to what you're talking about, transaction size, is are we selling them impulse purchases? Right. We got to sell them what they came for. Okay, that's great. Yeah, I need a can of paint. Well, everybody knows, we got to sell them the brush and the thinner and all the stuff that we used to sell in a paint project. But then what about other things that may or may not be related that we have the opportunity to sell them, which I think is extremely important at this time, because as people, and again, we're very fortunate that we were deemed essential and people shopped our stores, but we know a lot of people are shopping online and they're getting curbside. So it's even more important now when we have somebody in our stores to make sure that we're maximizing that opportunity. Yeah. And it's not just fun and games anymore. It's You know, how can we do it digitally? How can we do it, you know, by having the right number of people in the right place at the right time? It's all of those issues that really get right back to the question of closure rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many times people come into a store and, well, and I've seen too much of the data, and well, why didn't I? What'd you come to buy? Well, we came to buy this. Well, we carry that. Well, I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Or you don't carry it. Well, that's the onus is not on them; it's on the dealer,
right,
to make sure they can find it.
And I think that as we were kind of years back looking at conversion rate and doing some of this ad hoc research that I was talking about, you know, we would often find that when you do an examination of closure rate, it points up a lot of other possible challenges you have in their business. Like some things would be your in-stock position. I mean, if a customer is coming in to buy something and it's not on the peg hook on the shelf when they get there, and they walk out and say, "Oh, well, I didn't, you know, you didn't have what I needed," that might tell you, well, I need to look at inventory control more closely. But honestly, what we found more often than anything is it would boil down to increasing conversion or closure rate came down to employee training. Because a lot of times it's, oh, I came in to buy this product and the employee said they didn't have that. But then when we talked to a manager later and said, oh, this is specifically what, and they said, oh no, we don't have the, you know, the Robish widget, but we have the Trot and Check widget, which is basically the same thing. And it became an employee training issue of getting your employees to understand, yeah, we carry it. We don't carry the exact one they were looking for. But so that's another reason why I think.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, especially now because so many people are so brand driven.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's like, I always like the Band-Aid example because, you know, I need some Band-Aid. Well, you know, well, you sure you don't want Curad or what?
Yeah, exactly.
It's you got to train our people. This is the same thing. It'll do this. Better yet, this is better.
Right.
As the Trot and Check model was.
Yes, the Trot and Check brand of flush fill valve.
That's why they're not carrying mine.
For all those reasons, you know, looking at conversion rate is not only a kind of hot retail metric right now, but it's something that can really point you to other issues in your business. It's as Jim said, you know, I see the image of the old shopkeeper wringing his hands and back saying, oh, we got a live one when someone walks in the door. But it's kind of like that today. If someone is walking into your business, you have to maximize what you can do with that consumer while they're there. But two, I think conversion rate is just good because it points you to a lot of areas in your business that you might want to be addressing that can help lift other metrics as well.
It is one of the three variables in the revenue equation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't get to transaction size until you convert somebody.
Exactly. And so it goes hand in hand. If you want to look at transaction size and conversion rate, that's the 1-2 punch. You know, the other thing that we are looking at in some of our, and Jim and I are kind of giving a cursory overview of this. We could honestly do a webinar on each one of these and talk you through, here are the things you can do to impact your conversion rate or your other things. But that's some of the information that hopefully you'll get as NHPA continues to release more detailed findings on some of these key retail metrics. The next thing we want to talk about is occupancy cost, because we consistently see on cost of doing business that occupancy cost can play a big role. And it's not always what you think. I think it's funny because sometimes, you know, a lot of it is so driven by the markets. And right now we see real estate, as you all have benefited from, is going through the roof. So sometimes occupancy cost can be going up, and it's something you need to closely monitor as it relates to the sales in your business. But sometimes we see that savvy retailers pay less in occupancy cost. And there's a variety of ways you can get around to, why does that make sense? Am I paying too much rent, or am I not paying enough rent? You know, because maybe you're saying, you know, listen, I can get real low occupancy costs if I just move my store out to where nobody is and we're in a drafty old barn in the countryside. Well, you can drive your occupancy costs right down. But how does that impact the rest of your?
Got a lot of clients like that.
Yeah, exactly. But what are you seeing, or what do you think about looking at things like occupancy costs right now, Jim?
Well, occupancy cost, I look at it maybe a little bit differently than some people. Why do you want to pay a lot for a site? It's because it's visible. It's really kind of a marketing cost.
Right.
And
that's a good point.
We used to go back and the 5% of net sales. You're right, Kevin. Sorry. If you're going to pay 12% of your net sales in occupancy cost and 10 of that's rent, well, where are you going to get it? You can't just raise your gross margin. It doesn't work that way. So is it helping to attract people? Especially now with the digitizing of our world, it's a lot easier to maybe spend a little bit more, but maybe you really don't have to. And if you're delivering and everything else, but no, you've got to watch it really close, because we are clearly at an inflection point when it comes to brick and mortar, and occupancy costs is at the heart of it. And there's a chain. Old boy started a chain, had about 100 stores. It's still around. I won't name it. But he said, you know what I do to make money? I find the cheapest site I can, get a good manager, fill it up with inventory, and kick him in the butt. Well, part of that is
webinar over.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So, but the central to that was having low occupancy costs. Right. And if you look at the high performance, the upper quartile results in the CODB, and you look at the variation between the cost of sites, it's amazing.
Right.
And you've got to watch it all the time. Why not get up and move and go to a cheaper site if you don't have to have that site?
Absolutely. And for all those reasons, right now, it's one of the reasons we had occupancy costs as one of these key retail metrics. And again, it's not one of the ones that we typically talk about, but because of, the continued shift to online purchasing, delivery, the cost of real estate going up, it's one of those things that right now at this point in time is very critical for retailers to be watching.
Further on that point, if you look at how we've had to change operationally and use the store, that's going to drive making some decisions about, are you in the right spot? How much more can I pay? If I need extra space, am I processing online orders? There's so many things that enter into the occupancy cost question.
The next thing we're going to look at is similar, in my mind, in a lot of ways to occupancy cost, in that right now it's something you should always be looking at, but right now it's probably even more critical that you look at, and that's employee productivity. And what is the reason for that? Well, wages are going up. There's many places in the country where minimum wage has already hit $13, $14, $15 an hour. And I think we can see the winds blowing that within the next few years, whatever it ends up being, minimum wage is going to be higher than what it is. And I think it's also one of those things that well-seasoned retailers understand. In fact, I heard a retailer say, listen, I'll pay my employees whatever I need to pay them, as long as they're producing sales to support what the wages I'm paying. And so their thought was, listen, at some point, I'm tied to whatever this is going to be. I can lobby and write all the letters I want, but if minimum wage is going to change and so on, I need to figure out how to get more out of my employees. So I want to look closely at employee productivity and look at what is things like, what is the average sale per employee in my operation? What is it? What does each employee on average account for in terms of sales of your operation? What is the average gross margin that every employee accounts for? And once you understand those kind of employee productivity driven numbers, then you could look for, well, what are the ways that I can increase the productivity of my employees? And some of that has to do with training. Some of it has to do with automation. How can I, it's kind of a bandwagon that I get on a lot, is how do I equip my employees to be more efficient? Can I give them mobile devices? Is an investment in something like mobile technology going to make them more efficient? Can they quickly find out and impact other areas of the business, like, oh, do we have this item in stock? It's just not where I think it's going to be. Or can they quickly look up a price and make these kind of decisions? So again, there are important numbers to look at, but the solutions on how to drive incremental improvement in those numbers are really plentiful. There's a lot of ways you can do it. But another way, something you talked about earlier, Jim, is letting your employees in on what numbers you're measuring. If you say, listen, the average employee in this operation right now, our average sales per employee is $160,000 per employee, whatever it might be. And we really want to drive that number to $170,000 per employee by the end of the year. And assuming you're going to keep your head count the same, because there's quick ways to do that.
I'm getting to that.
Yeah, but then you could say, well, if we all do this, how do you benefit, employee? How do you benefit when we do this and get everybody pointed in that other direction? And when I'm going to turn it over to Jim, what I think Jim might talk about is it also gives you a really good idea. Are you overstaffed? Are you understaffed? And even more importantly, lately, I've seen a lot of retailers looking at hours, because I think one of the things that has kind of shifted with COVID is your store might have had its peak hours before between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. and then from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or something, so you would staff up accordingly. But a lot of times retailers don't look at it. It's like, I staff that way because that's how I've always staffed. And sometimes it's like, well, I have 4 employees sitting around doing nothing because the busy times have kind of shifted for us. But what are your thoughts on those figures and data?
Well, a couple things. One is the stench of the dollars per hour wage increase that is inevitably going to hit us. People are going to lose their jobs, and that's unfortunate. And we've got to have a way to address it in our stores that, one, is fair to the employees that do work hard, and employee productivity allows you to kind of look at that scale and say, well, I've got people that are generating this many sales per being there, and we got these that aren't so good. So you have a natural way.
Stack ranking, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing then is, you were talking about the technology. I think anymore, with less people, they've got to be smarter. You've got to give them the technical tools to be smarter. It's not about sometimes productivity working harder, because you ask them, they don't think they're working hard now, and a lot of them really are. But how can we help them to work smarter to get those up? And it always amazed me that, well, during the day we have this many people. Well, what do you mean during the day? How about these blocks of time?
Right. Let's not look at it as day and night. Let's look at it hours of the day. And I think very sophisticated retailers get a little bit deeper into even looking at these time shift patterns, that the hours on Monday mornings are different than the hours on Wednesday mornings. And
a lot of what I'm saying is, I see the research all the time, and people, you talk to the customers and, oh, their service is really bad. Well, there's nobody ever around. And you're looking around, there's plenty of people, they're just not doing anything, So we got to help them, and that's on us as management and owners to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for all those reasons, right now, when you look at key retail metrics, and there's not just one metric that is employee productivity, there's several things that make up that metric. Like I said, sales per employee, gross margin per employee, and then looking at other metrics again, like what are your sales patterns and how do those flow along with when you have employees in the store? Because it's
on the gross margin per employee.
Go
I think
right
that's one that's rarely watched, and boy, it's a simple one to get people to suggest. Well, why would you buy a $10 item when there's a $15 item that's really the one you want?
Right.
Yeah. We do those studies. How much did you expect to pay for this? Oh, $79. How much did you pay? $55. Well, they're ready to spend more.
Right, they're ready to spend more.
So we got to train the people that it's not bad to upsell and suggest other products, even though they're more expensive, because it drives gross margin.
And I think that's such a great point to make, is that, like we talked about with things like conversion rate, it really goes back to fitting pretty well into this concept of the way a doctor looks at a patient. It's like, if you go to the doctor and you've got high blood pressure, they don't just say, well, you've got high blood pressure. They start looking at, okay, that's the indicator that tells me to look at what are the causes of the high blood pressure, and then we address those causes. And it's no different than what we're talking about. Like Jim just said, if you're looking at gross margin per employee and it's not where you need it to be, or if it's off from what the industry average might look like Jim said, a lot of that probably has to do with training your employee and training them in concepts like upselling. Or it might also point at maybe it's time that I take a look at my gross margins to make sure that I've priced things correctly. And again, it gives you the prescription that you need to how do I address this. But the first thing is looking at that key retail metric and understanding, oh, that's a problem and that's something I want to address. Then you get prescriptive about how do we address that issue. And there could be a variety of ways. And you choose, like you would with your doctor, you choose the path that is best for you, that you think will most deliver you the best results and perhaps the easiest route or what might make sense for your business.
What doctor do you have?
Yeah.
I'm always told, take your lisinopril.
Well, right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but my guess is they say, well, I can give you a pill to fix that, but maybe if we did this, this, and this, it would also help. So again, I think a lot of these key retail metrics are really indicators that point up what are the issues that we need to address. The last thing we want to talk about in terms of key retail metrics isn't necessarily something that pulls right out of your income statement or balance sheet. It's something that you might have to do a little bit more digging for, but I think it is so important. How many times have you read in our magazine, heard Jim speak about, but the 80-20 rule, about 80% of my business comes from 20% of my customers, and you can apply it to a lot of things. 80% of my headaches come from 20% of my customers, But the truth is, data throughout the years has really proven this. And if you look at companies like Home Depot, if you look at companies, really any successful retail companies, they mine their customer data and they focus their marketing efforts on customers who are engaged with them. And so the last point we want to talk about is this concept of gathering customer data. And the best way to do that is really through loyalty programs. Because your loyalty programs, you could listen to some companies that have really strong loyalty programs, and they've mainly focused their advertising saying, listen, we're going to advertise a little bit to just the market in general, but we're really going to spend the bulk of our funds on what can we do to make our loyalty customers more, because we know those are the ones that regularly frequent our business and spend more money with us. So a presentation I just gave, I said, get fanatical about collecting customer data. Get fanatical about everything. Every week you should be running some kind of promotion to get people to sign up for a loyalty program. Or if you don't have a loyalty program, but they're so easy to get involved in these days. If for some reason you don't have a loyalty program, collect those emails. And it could be as simple as, we're going to give away this 5-gallon bucket filled with cookies and candy or whatever, and we need your name to enter, and we also need your email. But that is not necessarily a metric. But once you gather that data on your customers, you can slice and dice that in so many different ways to start understanding how great an impact those loyal customers have on your business. Jim, I probably am not surprised that you would be a supporter of loyalty programs and data gathering.
Yeah, and I really, you just want to go, and people say, well, why would I give good deals to my best customers? They're already my customers.
Right.
Well, it's called, you want to sell them more and you want to keep them. No, you're absolutely right. I think, we've had the perfect storm with loyalty programs. One, the programs have gotten that are, prevalent out there now have gotten so much easier, so much more customer focused, but we also have the technology now that allows them to not only mine the data, but take that data and do something with it. And, I'm sure our sponsors at Epicor provide an awful lot of data for that specific reason. But the whole issue of a loyalty program, do I drive to 7 different gas stations because I got one loyalty card? No. But it's nice when I'm there and all of a sudden you get an extra 20 cents off or whatever it is. But it does 2 things. One, it tells the customer, hey, this is kind of cool. I had a birthday last week. I finally turned 40. And
Jim, you're losing time. That was 30 years ago.
oh, yeah, okay, that's right. But here we go. I get local independent store sends me my happy birthday, $5 off. Well, heck, there's always something I need to pick up at a hardware store, and I just stick it in my wallet and I got it. But it was that Oh, happy birthday. Good. That's great. Of course, it was the only gift I got from anybody.
And
Except for you.
oh, yeah,
Thanks,
you didn't
man.
get my gift, my flower arrangement. Okay.
I think you ate it. But no, it's critical. And as I keep telling people, and just to reiterate your point, it's less about, customer loyalty as it is about how you can get information to know and better meet your customers' needs.
And why I think it's so important right now, Jim, too, is that, when I'm, again, on one of my sturdy soapboxes, and I talk about this concept of, I always hear from, if I hear from independent retailers about, well, we know our customers better than anybody else. I said, really? Because Amazon knows what I bought last time I was on there. They know what I'm likely to buy when I buy the product I might be buying on Amazon. They give me suggestions. They give me input from other people who have bought that product. So do you really know your customers better than anybody else out there?
They don't. That's right. A ridiculous statement.
And you might know 20 people or 40 people who come into your store because you play on a softball team with them or whatever. But in today's day and age of metadata, you really need to understand that you need to gather more than just the 20 or 30 people I know by face that come into my store. And that's why we've included this marketing and loyalty programs as one of those data points, one of those key retail metrics that you need to start thinking about.
And it's simple to do these days. It's not like okay, well, I'm going to get my kid from college and have him start this. And no, you can just pop them up and get them going. To whatever degree you want.
Right. And in most cases, it's flipping a switch. It's just like, oh, we're going to start a loyalty program, and there's companies out there that make it super easy.
Yeah.
It's readily available.
And your distributor partners are
very will be very happy to help you with that. Absolutely. Jim, thank you so much for, like I said, it's a couple of between two retail nerds here talking about this. And like I said, we can go on ad nauseum, if you will, about any one of these points.
It's always a pleasure to be humbled by you and these. And
so I see it as long as your wife or daughter are not here, I see it as my duty to humble you, Jim. And thank you to all of you who have tuned in, and please stick around for all the other information we're going to be giving out on this this webinar. And in the future weeks to come, look for more information from NHPA on this specific key retail metrics topic. And lastly, thank you again to our sponsor, Epicor, who, as Jim said so eloquently, can definitely help you get to the bottom of looking at and monitoring some of these key retail metrics in your operation and getting you to that point of incrementally improving every aspect of what you do. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Tim Gallo, and I'm a Senior Director at Epicor. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you will find this information as valuable as we believe that it is. Epicor sits in a unique position, not only one of having unique domain expertise, but also providing innovation to our retailers. We provide both industry knowledge as well as practical know-how. Here at Epicor, we've created a team of people that not only have technical expertise, but also people with experience in their independent retail channel, just like the customers that we serve. At Epicor, it's not just about having access to data. It's taking that data and turning it into information is where the value lies. That is definitely something that we can assist with. We provide not only the best practices, but also the tools that an independent retailer needs to best be able to lead your business. We want you spending more time leading your business, less time crunching data. The 4 areas that I want to discuss today: 1, market basket; 2, analytics; 3, automation; and 4, mobility. First, market basket. Think of market basket as an affinity report. This is a perfect example of where we can take data, put it in an actionable format so that you can make better decisions. Better decisions not only about ordering, about pricing, and about where to put product in the store. You can use the market basket affinity report throughout a variety of different ways within the business to get the information that you're looking for. I'd now like to touch on analytics. Analytics is a much overused term that means different things to different people. The way that I want to define analytics today is I want to take your raw data, turn it into information, and then be able to do something actionable about it. That could be a dashboard. It could be a viewer where you're consuming information on the screen. It could be a report. It could be something sent to your phone. Determining and understanding your key business metrics and being able to measure them is your path to success. Moving on to automation. Your system should do the heavy lifting. It should take your raw data, format it, structure it, and put it in a way for you to consume it. At Epicor, we believe that you should spend more time acting on actionable information than collecting data. The system should collect the data and provide it to you in a format that you can use it with. The value of any of this information is what you do with it. If you spend all of your time collecting it, it minimizes the amount of time that you can be actionable. The other key part from my perspective as it relates to automation is I want to be able to consume the information in a way that works for me. For me, the reports that I get, the information that I look at, the key metrics that drive the business that I'm responsible for, that information gets pushed to me. I get it in an email. I have associates that prefer to get theirs on their phone. Others, they want to look at it in a report. Others like reading it on their screen. We provide you that information in a format that you can use it in a way that it's easiest for you to consume. That way, it has the most value and you can do something with it. This information is consumed anywhere you happen to be. This brings me to my final point, mobility. We live in a world today where no one is tethered to their desk, or no one really wants to be tethered to their desk. So how do we get this information to you? Within the Epicor system, we can not only provide you your management information in a mobile fashion on your phone, on your tablet, wherever you happen to be in the world, or while you're in the store, we can bring the system and information to your associates, to your customers, anywhere in the store. We don't want everything bottlenecking at point of sale or at a service desk. This provides you the opportunity to serve your customers in the aisles, in the parking lot, in the nursery, where they need to be served. The most important piece about mobility is security, making sure that your data is secure. Within the Epicor system, we offer mobility in a secure environment so that only people with the proper credentials have access to your all-important data. In summary, I just wanted to thank you for taking time to participate today. What we briefly discussed was taking data and making it actionable information. Specifically, we talked about an affinity report that we refer to as Market Basket. We talked a little bit about analytics, on automation, how you want to consume that information, and we finished on mobility. All key topics in today's independent retailing channel. Again, my name is Tim Gallo. I'm a Senior Director at Epicor. Appreciate your time again. Please feel free to reach out to us at retail@epicor.com. Thank you.